So, good afternoon. We are at our last panel. I have the honor to introduce you Priest Bcheiry Iskandar from Chicago. He will delight us with a topic which is entitled Sect Places into Abdin in Collection of Syriac Orthodox Archives from the late Ottoman period. Please, Bcheiry, the role is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Shlomo al-Kulkhun Ahwotho. Good afternoon. Among the important historical archival materials that have attracted and continue to attract the interest of researchers studying the history of the Syriac Christian community during the late Ottoman period are the archives held at the Library of the Syriac Orthodox Church of the 40 Martyrs in Mardin and Deir al-Za'faran. This collection of thousands of documents sheds light on many aspects of the Syriac people's life and their relationship with their neighbors. I aim to review some of these documents, registers, and lists that are directly related to Christian sacred sites such as monasteries, churches, and grottos in Abdin. These forms part of a broader survey of the locations where Syriacs lived in southeastern Anatolia. A key insight from this document is the impact of the Syriac community's expansion from Abdin toward the southern plain on the social and religious infrastructure of the mountain, particularly in the areas of monasteries, churches, sanctuaries, and shrines, which were affected in various ways. Just a brief geographical context. Abdin is a plateau that stretches north from the Tigris River and the plains of Nisibis south, and west from the region of Beth Mehlem and Sawro until the Tigris River and Wadi Johannam, or the Creek of Johannam, east. The convent and monasteries of this area, along with their ruins, demonstrate the strength of Christianity's presence over the centuries past. This region was a place of refuge for the non-Chalcedonians who were persecuted and who sought security in this rugged mountain. 19th century travelers described Abdin as wild with an utter want of water. The villagers relied on the numerous and immense reservoirs they carved into rocks to collect the winter rains and the snow. In regard to the sources, the Syriac Orthodox archives in Mardin hold about 10,000 documents, mainly petitions sent to various Syriac Orthodox patriarchs during the 19th and early 20th century. The archive was digitized between 2005 and 2010, with digital copies stored at the Beth Mardutho Syriac Institute in New Jersey. It is important to note that by the mid-1800s, the Syriac Patriarchate gradually started keeping organized records, surveys, and registers. This shift was part of the Ottoman administration's effort during the 19th century reforms to adopt modern statistical methods. Among the archives of the Syriac Orthodox Church in Mardin, there is a survey report of churches, monasteries, and grottos found in many villages in Abdin, conducted by local people at the request of Patriarch Peter IV. Besides the villages and sacred sites, it also records the names of papals, deacons, and priests serving in those locations. Although there is no exact date, it most likely took place between 1882 and 1890. The survey report comprises 7 sub-reports, each covering religious places within or near a group of villages in the geographical area surrounding a major village or town. Concerning our topic, this survey document more than 100 deserted or ruined churches and monasteries in Tur Abdin. And the following table presents the number and type of this deserted site. For example, you will see in some churches identified but deserted, in ruin, or unidentified, the people, they don't know the name of the sacred place. Or also it mentions churches occupied by Muslim or Yazidi. And at the last column you can see the numbering and the total. The survey findings indicate that most abandoned, ruined, or former churches and monasteries in northern Tur Abdin, in the north part of Tur Abdin, were located in villages mainly inhabited or partially inhabited by Muslims. While in southern Tur Abdin, these sacred places were mostly found in semi-deserted or deserted villages. Now, in addition to the survey report, there is a large amount of letters, petitions, and correspondence between the local clergy, notable people, and village representatives on the one hand, and the Patriarchate on the other, which gives us an idea of the situation of sacred places in many locations in Tur Abdin, intersecting with the socio-economic context. And here I will list a sample of these letters. Letter to Patriarch Peter IV from Maqdisi Georgis dated April 19, 1889. This letter informs the Patriarch that a monk named Hanna, the servant of the monastery of Mor Elio in the village of Ahbab, had passed away, leaving the monastery deprived of a priest monk or a priest to conduct liturgical services, with only 2 deacons remaining. The letter urges the Patriarch to ordain these 2 deacons as monks because the only remaining monk in Ahbab who serves the main church of the village, that of Saint Sarkis and Bacchus, is very ill and can no longer serve his church. As well as the monastery of Mor Elio, the churches of Saint Shmouni, Mor Georgis, Mor Hazoil, Mor Behnam, and the church of Saint Mary. All these churches have been left without prayers, services, or masses. Furthermore, Georgis explains that the village of Ahbab is home to 500 houses. All Christians and all their departed people are buried in the village cemetery. However, at the present of writing the letter, the village is empty and deserted, and the monastery are without priest. Another letter to Patriarch Peter IV from Maqdisi Afrem and Deacon Barsam dated April 9, 1892. The letter informs us that when a priest named Aho, who served the church in Ma'are, returned to his village of Hbob, the Patriarch was displeased and ordered him to go back to Ma'are. The people of Hbab petitioned to the Patriarch to allow priest Aho to return to his village, especially since he owned lands, properties, and houses there. Additionally, the letter states that 30 families of Hbab origin have also returned to their village, and the priest Aho has been serving the people spiritually and managing church affairs for about 1.5 years. Since he is the only priest in Ahbab, if he returns to Ma'are, 30 households will lack religious services, prayers will not be held in the church, and people will not go to confession. The letter recounts that Ahbab had been abandoned for 30 years, but after the government designated as an administrative center and appointed an administrator about 1.5 years ago, the Yazidis and outlaws submitted to the government. This gave hope to the impoverished residents and led many others to wish to return and restore their properties and fields in Ahbab. Another letter to Patriarch Peter IV from the clergy and representative from Arbo, Hbab, Badibe, and Kharabale dated 1892. This letter requests the Patriarch's permission and support to gather financial aid for the Mor Malki monastery. It explains that the monastery is empty, lacking food and logistical resources, and that its bishop is living in poverty in a deprived diocese. Therefore, they ask the Patriarch to allow the bishop of the monastery to visit the villages in the prosperous plain east of Nisibis and collect contributions, and that Bishop Hanna of Nisibis should facilitate rather than hinder the mission of the Bishop of Mormalke. These obstacles are likely to worsen the monastery's situation. The letter reports that the villagers in the region belonging to the monastery's diocese are suffering hardship to the injustice. It notes that most villages have moved to the plain, with only a few remaining in their villagers. Therefore, without the support of the plain's inhabitants, their monastery risk remained deserted. Another letter to Patriarch Peter IV from priests and representatives of villages in the plains, dated September 21st, 1892. Another petition from this priest and representative of the villages in the plain to the Patriarch defends a monk named Yaqub who left Mor Aho monastery and settled in the region. The petition described Mor Aho monastery as a deserted place with no monks residing there for 3 years. It also occupied and looted by Yazidis, making the monks afraid to live there. Another letter to Patriarch Peter IV from Deacon Yeshua, dated September 21st, 1889. The letter informs the Patriarch that as in the previous year, when the Yazidi came and plundered the monastery of Mor Yaqub near Badibe, they came the following year led by a bandit named Mishke al-Mardini, plundered the same monastery and left. As a result, the monastery inhabitant abandoned it and took refuge in the Badibe church. And another letter to Patriarch Abdel Masih from the priest and representative of the village of Bato, Saleh, Kafru, and Habsnas. This letter informs the Patriarch that since the death of Bishop Shamoun of the monastery of Mor Yaqub in the village of Saleh, no prayers or masses have been held at the monastery due to a shortage of a priest. Therefore, the people of Saleh and the neighboring villages chose a deacon named Khalaf and sent him to serve the Patriarch to be ordained a monk. He would then return to reside and run the monastery, which had become empty due to the lack of a priest. Another letter to Patriarch Peter IV from the people of Beth Qustan, dated April 1st, 1886. This letter informs us that the villagers sent a subdeacon named Shabo to the Patriarch to be ordained a priest, as the only remaining priest in the village named Danho was unable to care for all the village's 100 families. The villagers were worried that if their priest went somewhere, there would be no one left to run their church, and their worship would be disrupted. Another letter to Patriarch Peter IV from Priest Afrem dated August 18, 1894. Priest Afrem informs the Patriarch about the dear situation of the monastery of Mor Sharbel in Mediat, which is on the verge of being abandoned. He stated that one of the monastery's monks, named Yohanan, is ill, and there are only 8 monks and deacons remaining. Priest Afrem asked the Patriarch for permission to collect donations from the fields and houses of the people, especially since there is a severe shortage of wheat and barley in Tor Abdin that year. Without the collection of charities, the monasteries will face hardships. Letter to Patriarch Peter IV from the clergy and representatives from Hassan Kef, dated August 26, 1894. This letter informs the Patriarch that a bandit named Mahmoud Majid from the village of Der Ahab, who came from the region under the command of Khalil Agha, attempted to plunder the Makhar monastery. However, the monastery's inhabitants defended themselves and forced the bandit to leave. He then moved on to the Christian village of Daphne, where he stole their sheep. The letter states that the monastery's inhabitants are fearful, and if their property and money are not protected, the monks will leave their monastery along with the villagers of Daphne. Another letter to Patriarch Peter IV from representatives from Saleh, dated April 11, 1891. This letter informs the Patriarch that since the death of Shem'un, the bishop of the monastery of Mor Yaqub, located in the village of Saleh, the monastery has remained empty due to a lack of a priest. Therefore, the community has chosen the disciple of that late bishop named Khalaf from the same village of Saleh, and informed the Patriarch of their desire to ordain him as a monk priest to serve the monastery. This is so that the monastery does not remain abandoned, lest the mouth of the ferocious wolves open to devour the monastery and its stones. If the monastery had a leader, the wolves would not have been able to do anything. Discussion. Concluding. Summarizing the basic information from this sample of letters we have reviewed, it can be said that there was a significant shortage of priests to serve the churches of the villages of Tur Abdin during the second half of the 19th century, which posed a major challenge to the community's ability to maintain church buildings and property. This problem was linked to the complete or relative demographic emptiness of the villages inhabited by Syriacs as a result of their increasing migration toward the fertile plains south of the mountain by the end of the 18th century. Many Western travelers who passed through these southern plains described the country and its inhabitants, noting the increasing Jacobite presence among the Kurds and Arabs. Buckingham, who visited the region in 1826, reported that most villages in these plains and hills were Christians. Southgate, who traveled through the same area around 1839, observed that Christian Jacobites comprised a significant part of the population there, living in more than 27 villages. It is worth noting that historically, the Christian demographic weight of the slopes of Mountain Isla and the plains stretching from Nizbi to Botan, opposite of Tur Abdin, belonged to the Church of the East. This region formed a Diophysite block that resisted the expansion of the Miaphysite from Tur Abdin in the north or Mardin in the west for several centuries. When the Syriac Orthodox Patriarch Ignatius Sobo of Tur Abdin between 1482-1489 attempted to take control of the churches, some churches in Nisibis, the eastern Syriac were still numerous enough to oppose this move. Also, when Patriarch Jean Barshila sought to rebuild the church for his small community in Nizbi, his effort faced resistance from members of the Church of the East. However, the decline of the Church of the East in Nizbi, the southern slopes of Mountain Tur Abdin, and the surrounding plains during the 19th century, caused by widespread conversion to Catholicism, opened the door for the Syriac Orthodox Church to expand its population into this area. Reports indicate that some members and churches of the Church of the East joined the Syriac Orthodox Church. For example, the Church of St. James in Nisibis belonged to the Church of the East. In 1865, they preferred not to hand it over to the Chaldean, they handed over to the Syriac Orthodox. And actually, this we have here document from the same period of the 19th century. The villagers, the inhabitants of a village called Amirin, were members of the Church of the East. And one day, the Syriac Orthodox bishop, after visiting the area of Bezabdai Azekh, he went to that village, and between two brackets, the Nestorian villagers of that village, they asked the bishop to rebuild their church, and if he will rebuild their church, they will join the Syriac Orthodox Church, and they joined the Syriac Orthodox Church. It was opposed by the Chaldean because they considered him their part, but they joined. Means demographically, yes, the Syriac largely expanded from the Mount of Tur Abdin south, but also certain community and group from the Church of the East joined the Syriac Orthodox Church, and this is why the Syriac Orthodox Church had like more than 30, 40 villages there. However, the churches were very few. Then there was efforts to build the churches there, but the priests, they were brought from the mountain, which also caused more emptiness and deserted churches in the mountain. I would like to conclude there is kind of irony here. The Syriac Orthodox Church moved demographically to the south, and they filled the south with many villages. However, they created vacuum, emptiness in the mountain itself, which was filled by the Kurd and the Yazidi. Means they filled the places of the Church of the East in the plain, but they were filled by the Kurd and the Yazidi in the mountain. There is dynamic shift demographic. Thank you very much.
Now we have about 10 minutes for questions, comments, because this is a very exciting topic. So please, yeah. Short questions, please.
Thank you. First simple question is, these letters which you show from the center of Turab being sent to the Patriarch, they were, looks to be most of them in Syriac, or are they also in Arabic or other languages written on the Shim? The other question is, to write such letter to fill a vacancy of one of the monasteries that they need a priest or ordain a monk or bishop is very normal process. It's nothing unusual. And our monasteries, in the Syriac tradition in general, when we speak about monastery, it's not a Western concept. It's a monastery where you've got usually 10, 20 people, 30 people being in one monastery. We have only few monasteries, when we are talking about 19th century or 20 or even probably 18, I don't know about the 18, but we are talking always actually each monastery there were one or two people. And it's very normal when one of the priests dies or no priest anymore is there to write, to ask, and give a reason why they need again a priest and to fill this position.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Answer. Now, if we, this is not really the case. If we return back to the record of ecclesiastic ordinations and we see statistically how many priests were ordained as priests, for example, during the 14th, 15th, 16th century, it's so normal. For example, Luxor, many villages, even in Tor Abdin, it's very normal to see 7, 8, 9, sometimes 12 priests serving in the village. But during this period, there is really, means you have one, two, take an example, in this period, it was in a liturgical manuscript described in the catalog of Tor Abdin by Barthoma. He speaks about the priest of Ahbab, in the same this period. In Ahbab, there were like 2 priests serving 5 churches and 1 monastery, 2 only priests, when Ahbab used to have 12 priests, where they were the other priests of Ahbab serving the newly built priest in the plain. And he will list the Ahbabi priests who are nowadays serving in the plain. Means they were being brought, there were really shortage of a priest. Yeah.
Now, please.
My question is more operational. I wonder how do you selected these letters, because I know there are hundreds or thousands of such letters. How did you read all of them? How do you fix the relative ones? It's interesting for my research too.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it's not like secret. I have a copy of the entire depository, about 10,000 documents. From time to time, I will go through of them according to a topic that I'm interested about it, or region, or something. Means you are talking about 10,000 documents that I was like a crazy. Just.
So you found them by accident? Or?
Oh no! You go there and you don't need so much effort to find such topic. You don't. Yeah. It means the problem, you become addicted that you can't stop. It means at certain time you have to stop the research. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Abuna, for the presentation. Really great. You mentioned that, or you pointed out that there are more than 100 deserted or ruined churches. Unfortunately, they are not registered in the foundations, most of them. So how can the community in Turkey claim them? Because they are not registered in the Waqf, in the church foundations.
Maybe this was the reason why Patriarch Peter sent his delegate to register and to survey the churches, because there was At that time, at the end of the 19th century, middle 19th century, end of 19th century, there was a great interest by the Syriac Patriarchate to register the churches because the conflict also with the Catholic and the Westerners. For example, this is another example. Here we have a development, evolution in the way that the Syriac Orthodox Church will register will document the building, the sacred places. It's not just that we have a church or a church located in a village. It's the length, the width, what kind it's built by wood or by stone, where it's located, what's being surrounded by, who built it, and you have. But this is in Turkish, and I am grateful to John Besawi and Majid Mutaf, who helping me a little bit just to read the Turkish here. But see the evolution of how to register the waqf to save them.
But do you see a chance to register them now?
Oh, no, I don't know about, I don't know what's going on today.
That's a question that probably you have to deal with it afterwards with him. So please.
Yes, Abuna, thank you very much for your presentation. I want to confirm, or I can confirm two things you mentioned. One of them is going to the plain by the Syrian Orthodox from the mountains. My family had 3 priests in the same big clan in Medan, and one of them was sent, Ashur Yusuf, to one of these villages in the plain. Actually, they don't know which village, but they say Zeyolalta. He went to the plain. He went to the plain to serve there in one of the many villages. The second is that Max von Oppenheim, in his diary or in his description of his travel to this region, 1889 or 1898, he mentions actually close to Nisibis, an Asturian village with its sheikh Isa, a young boy, the sheikh of the village, with a picture of him among his elderly people or notables of the village. So still in the end of the 19th centuries or the beginning, there were still, let's say, so-called Nestorian villages in this region. Just to confirm what you said.
Right.
No. First it was Dr. No. Okay, you and then our bishop. Go first. No. He must respect the
Now I have to betray my not missing knowledge. Why is this archive, which should be in the Patriarchate, not there, and why does it end and stay here? Why was it kept in the frozen state? You said the last documents are from the early 20th century. When was that exactly? And why did it just fade out in the archive?
Yeah, the documents are in Mardin, in the 14th church, Mardin, and there is Zafaran. Yeah, we call them Patriarchate archives because it belonged to the Patriarchate was in Mardin before. And there is this is what we call it.
There still is a Patriarchate, and why is it not anymore?
I think by law, Turkish law, you can preserve your manuscript, but you cannot take them out of the country. I think, I'm not sure. Yeah.
No, it's exactly this. If the manuscript is discovered, then it will be confiscated, and this is the fear of the people.
Yeah.
Thank you, Abuna.
Thank you.
I have a question about the shift between the East Syriac and the West Syriac, especially in the region of Turaki. Even today, in fact, when you look at some of the villages, including mine, Kun Shukro, the patron saint for our church is an East Syriac, more appropriate of Kashgar, as well as the neighboring village, Marbobo, Marbabai. And we have also the names of most of the people in that region, which are according to the East Syriac dialect, like Marauge, Isho, Gauriel, and so on. I was wondering whether this shift was natural to the people, forced upon them, or even sometimes the Christological and doctrinal differences, but it did not bother them.
Is it a question, right? Yeah. Means as a villagers, as community, as member, they joined the Syriac Orthodox Church usually in the 18th, 19th century during this period. But the influence of the Church of the East spirituality in our church is well presented, not even in the Copt. Isaac of Nineveh, Abraham Kashkroyo, Abraham Natfraya, the Church of the East impacted the spirituality of the entire world. Even in the Russian Orthodox, Dostoevsky will talk about Isaac of Nineveh. Spiritually, there is impact, but this is since maybe 7th, 8th century. But this is different.
Does this indicate these members of these villages were East Syriac?
Not means yeah. It is hard to say who used to be East Syriac. It is hard. Means we have these documents that shows that really there were 40 families in Ammarin joined the Syriac Orthodox Church. But nowadays it's difficult to know from the inhabitants of the plain villages who really belong to the mountain, unless if they have their own oral history. Yeah.
Is there any other questions or just a big applause for let's now go to the next speaker, who is Dr. von Ginkel from the University of Berlin, who will delight us with a topic which is called On the Informal Connections Between Syriac Orthodox Communities in Eastern Turkey and the Syriac communities in India at the end of the 19th and early 20th century. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one last remark regarding the last speaker. The shifting of communities from one church to another, we already have from the 8th century. If a priest has trouble with his bishop, it was already in the 8th century Syriac Orthodox priest then all of a sudden decided, I like the East Syriac bishop better because he allows me more freedom. And we find that through all the times. One of the bishops I will be discussing today had trouble with one of his priests, and the next day the priest and his entire community were Armenian all of a sudden. It happens. Okay, now to my real topic on the informal connections between the Syriac Orthodox communities in the reason why I came to this topic, and some people who know me a little bit longer know I have a kind of favorite bishop, let's put it that way. Mar Dionysius Abdul Nur Aslan, who is for me the entry point to the history of the Syriac Orthodox Church in the late 19th century, all the way until 1933, his death. And in my hobby research, I try to collect material on his life and his works. And what I am going to present today is part of that. It also means that this is a starting point, not an end point. But I come across aspects in his works which lead me to think about the history of the Syriac Orthodox Church in this period, which is a fascinating period for me. And in a certain way, this is also a call for help for other people to tell me if they have seen similar things and can add material. Like I said, this is a project. The other bishop that is central is Gevagese Grigorios, who is an Indian bishop who is central to the second part of the development of the Syrian Orthodox Church in Kerala. And we heard about the trip by Patriarch Peter IV to India. He was his secretary and translator, and basically was his eyes and ears in India, and was rewarded with becoming a metropolitan in Niranam. The intriguing thing is, Mar Dionysius Abdul Nur Aslan never met the man. But when he died, he wrote a Mimra in his memory. And intriguingly enough, that Mimra has survived. It was used in a commemoration service in 1903 in his church in Kharput. The text was then sent to India and has been preserved in India, but I have a copy of it that was sent to Randall Harris, and which now ended up in the John Rylands Library in Manchester. And this is a fascinating text. It has a Mimra accompanied by a whole lot of historical notes, both from the past and from his own time. So it's an intriguing source for the history of the Syrian Orthodox Church. Very ideologically tainted, of course. That's to be expected. That every historiography has that. But it is fascinating. Which brings me, and this is the manuscript as it is in John Rylands Library. Be aware, this is a copy of the original. This is what it was intended to look, most likely. But already in this version, things go wrong, things got squashed. This is what ended up in India, but I was told this is the original. I had a look at the entire manuscript. No, this is also a copy. Whether or not where that was made, I'm not entirely sure. What is intriguing is that in this text, Dionysius, who, like I said, lived in Kharput, he comes from Turabdin, has lived for a long while in Istanbul, and none was in, no connection to India. He gives us a history of Christianity in India. To him, that is an important topic. And that is what intrigues me. Why would somebody be interested in that? With short context, Indian Syriac Christianity, most people will know. St. Thomas went as a missionary. Later on, Thomas of Cana in the 4th century definitely is the starting point of Christianity in India, Syriac Christianity. The intriguing thing is it's far away, and the connection to the Near East was certainly after the arrival of Islam and the Arabs, let's say, problematic. For the most part, even though it was created because of the trade routes bringing the Christians as traders into South India, the connections more or less disappeared, and for 1,000 years, Syriac Christianity in India was on its own. And they were in this region, so southwest India, which meant that it adapted itself to an Indian context. Then, after, what happens here? Then, in the late 15th century, but basically the 16th century, the Portuguese arrive, and with them, Roman Catholic missionaries. And then, Syriac Christianity in India is once again connected to other forms of Christianity. And there were previously some connections, but it was very isolated. The Christianity now, the interesting thing is, if you wanted to connect to most connections, actually went from the Near East over Rome to India, rather than a direct connection for the high-ranking officials. There was an attempt by the Romans to Latinize it, and we have heard another story about that, and I'm not going to waste my time on that. The Dutch took over, situation changed a little bit. It does result in Dutch archives. We have actually Syriac letters from bishops from India, which were supposed to be sent to the Patriarch in the Near East. They all ended up, were sometimes sent also to the Patriarch in the Near East, but we have at least copies, and one of the publications early on, it was discussed in Hugoye, is a letter which was then published by a Dutch scholar, well, German scholar actually, but he lived in Leiden. This shows how difficult the connection was. Stuff went through various ways in order to get to India and back. This means that Indian Christianity focuses on an indigenous clergy and an indigenous church. But at the same time, it wants to link up with the mother church, which is either the Church of the East, which was the original source of Syriac Christianity in Kerala, and later on the West Syriac Church when they became in contact. But at the same time, there is a clear push by colonial powers, the Portuguese and later the English, to reform the church there to fit their needs, whatever that may be. In addition, of course, personal ambitions of bishops and other people in India also play a role in fragmenting the community there, which results on Indian Christianity now looking like this. And we don't need to discuss that history as is. So let's move on to India in the late 19th century. Like I said, it's the Syriac Orthodox community there splits over internal problems and also on the issue of to what extent the Indian communities can remain indigenous, autonomous, and to what extent does the Patriarchate and the Church in the Near East have a say on how Christianity, Syriac Christianity, has to be lived in Kerala. And this tension, of course, results ultimately in the visit of Patriarch Ignatius Peter IV, which restructures the church in such a way that it links up with the Near Eastern church as intended, but the more indigenous oriented split off, and as a result, we have yet more more communities. This is the history. These are the important people who were traveling. There were other people traveling as well. So when yesterday we were introduced to Patriarch Peter's visit to India, he was not the first high-ranking official that actually went. Already before that, in 1856, Abdel Nur Arbaya, we met him already as a copyist, and Barthoma, in his work somewhere else, actually tells us that he is a very good copyist and a great scholar, who was later on the Metropolitan of Marmalke, and he, in 1856, traveled to India. He wrote a travelogue, and we have 2 manuscripts of that travelogue describing his personal trip. Well, his assistant actually wrote the travelogue, that has to be said. But we have a whole description of the Indian church and how it functions pre Peter IV from a Near Eastern perspective. In that text, you also see that he is interested in other people who went to Kerala. In those 2 manuscripts, he has a list of fathers who went to Malabar. I have to continue. Okay, there are other manuscripts with correspondence between the Near East and India, not on the high-level stories, but on the low-level stories. For example, in Mar Gabriel, manuscript 240 has a whole bunch of those letters. which illustrates a level of contact between the Near East and India, which I think deserves some further research. Like I also said, my own Mar Dionysius shows an interest in the history of Christianity in India, but he's not the first. We have several other manuscripts which do the same. In the manuscript, he also has another list. We go to my famous Dionysius Abdul-Nur and India. In his comments on his Mimra, he states in 1903, "We long and desire to be grabbed by the Spirit and go to India to see our brothers, and obedience and willingness to listen to the seed of Antioch is what he hopes to create, and to go to India to prophesy and to them and have part in their labors to complete the funeral procession of Mar Gregory." It is intriguing that he still is thinking in ways of, he almost has to missionary zeal towards India. Again, he has nothing to do with India in his entire life, which is intriguing. But, and that is also in his comments, he shows us contacts on another level between India and the Near East. He discusses that actually in India there is a printing press by Mar Julius, and it's used to print books and teaching material, which is sent to the Near East. The printing presses in the Near East seem not to be able to provide enough material in this time that is needed in the region. India was known for a long time already in the 19th century as producing cheap books. They did it for the Islam, they did it for other communities. It is a center of printing. And in the pre-Seyfo time, it seems, and I have been trying to locate those prints, I haven't been able yet. And also, this is one of the things that I say, this is why I talk to you, did something survive? This is the printing press, one of the printing presses in India, so it's not the easiest way to deal with printing presses. But there's another side to the story. He also tells us about that there are manuscripts sent to India. So this highly illustrates what we had yesterday about the amount of manuscripts that appear in India, in Indian collections. The Conrad collection is a famous one, which have a Near Eastern origin, in order to actually bring knowledge, theology, but also non-religious knowledge to the Indian community, to make them more in line with the Near Eastern form of the Syrian Orthodox Church, in my opinion. But that might be a personal misinterpretation. We can discuss that. Another form of contacts that are shown in this text, he discusses how Gevarghese Margarios in 1895 takes a bunch of people from Kerala and actually goes on a pilgrimage to the Near East. He visits the Holy Land, including the bishop, the metropolitan of Jerusalem, and he wrote the first, as far as I know, original Malayalam text that has actually preserved as a form of literature of this experience. This text needs to be, it's available in Malayalam, but it really needs an English translation, to be perfectly honest. 1 minute, okay. So, final remarks. Indian Christianity, Syriac Christianity is old and indigenous and isolated. But the contacts are rare until the 19th century. But you see the intensification of those contacts, especially in the 19th century, the second part of the 19th century. That is in part on a high level, where the church in the Near East wants to bring the Syriac communities in Kerala in line with what they perceive as what Syriac Orthodoxy is. It is a form of centralization. But on a lower level, there are also contacts. And I think these contacts are often ignored. And I would like to suggest that it might be an interesting field of research for coming times. And with that, I finish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ginkel. Now we have 10 minutes for discussion and comments. Yes, please, Dr. Angelo.
Thank you, and thank you, Jan, for a very, very interesting presentation. I just wanted to alert you to the fact that, I mean, it's problematic for us to say that Syriac Christianity in India was isolated and contact with the Near East was rare or sporadic, because the evidence was destroyed by the Portuguese.
In part, yes.
Almost completely. There are a handful of manuscripts.
But then you would have expected in the Near East material,
Yes.
the remarks in the Near East are also very, very general
Well, the links with the Patriarchate in Baghdad, and the patriarchal libraries in Baghdad were destroyed by the Mongols. So really, India was on the spice route.
Yeah.
And during the Abbasid period and during the Sasanian period, there must have been constant contact between Baghdad and Seleucia and Ctesiphon and the Malabar coast.
That must be, but we have no indication. We have, for example, the copper plates do not show any sign of knowledge of the Near East, and those are from the 9th century. And that's the problem. Yes, you're right. Like I said, the trade routes, you basically assume there must be. The problem is we can't find anything in the Near East, and we have nothing in India. And yes, you're right, there are clear indications of moments where collections of material are destroyed. The story of Syriac manuscripts in India is the Jampur disaster is known to everybody. But still, there should be more. And also in the oral history of the churches in India, there is so limited. And also after the arrival of the Portuguese, and when the contacts become more visible to us after Jampur, even then, in the 16th, 17th century, it is sporadic. And the intriguing thing is that real close connections you only see in the 19th century. With the discussion, like I said, the letters in the Dutch time, if they want to send letters, they tended to send them with the Dutch to the Netherlands. From the Netherlands, they went to the Near East. Rather than sending them, what you would expect, with the spice route to Basra. That would be the logical way to do it. But no, that material, and oddly enough, we have copies of that material.
Maybe it had to be censored.
Plays a role. But the intriguing thing is this. So the one that I showed you actually explicitly says the bishop has talked to the governor of the Dutch in Kerala, and the governor suggests, give it to me, then we know for sure that it arrives. Whether or not that is true, we don't know.
Indeed, in relation to what has been underlined, I was a few months ago in the library of Coimbra in Portugal, and what we discovered, there is a note which underlines the fact that the bishop of the Church of the East was taken, intercepted and taken, and then sent to Portugal instead, arriving to his own houses. Yeah.
In the Portuguese time, we have the same story. We have several of people also from the Near East who were sent to India, but they have to go to Rome, and then they have to go to Portugal or Spain, and then they arrive in India. They never travel through Ottoman territory, for whatever reason.
Professor Aho had a question, I think.
Thank you, Jan. I sometimes wonder, because the story, since the Portuguese have been there, and the later the Dutch and so on, they dominate so much the definition of the historical situation in India and their relationship to the East Syriac Church or West Syriac Church. And I mean, if you look in the 11th, 12th centuries, there are always, of course, indication, and some of the writers, they were aware about the Thomas Christians, but of course we haven't got any clear idea what was the relationship at that time. And would you think is it still an area that hasn't been really researched and one could find the material, because as we know, I mean, a lot of it is gone lost, doesn't exist, and one probably has to be very lucky to find something. But somehow is still the question remain not answered. How can a church remain there isolated for centuries if there really were not a proper interaction with, from your point of view, with the Middle East, from their point of view to the West?
The point is, of course, a church, they had their own structures, and that was clearly, it evolved over time. So their hierarchy was completely different from what we see in the Near East. Only after the arrival of the Portuguese, and then the first contacts become slightly more intensive, slightly more. Every half century, there are some contacts. They start to also under pressure of the Portuguese/Roman Catholics, to come back to a more established structure, hierarchy. They had different solutions to the problem of how to raise their community. Because they were isolated, they had to invent for themselves how to live. And it must be said, they lived very well, because the copper plates, that's one of the few indigenous literary sources that we have of Christianity there, show us a very well-to-do and highly regarded community in Kerala. The Christians were, the indigenous Christian communities were highly regarded there. So they did well. And it was not a negative thing to be part of that community. So they weren't a minority under pressure, let's put it that way, which makes life maybe also easier. In some ways, when the Portuguese arrive, it's a blessing for them because there's more Christianity for them. But at the same time, the Portuguese actually, slash the Catholics, have problems with heresy. And then all of a sudden they become an oppressed community. So in some ways, the arrival of Catholicism breaks up their own traditions and may also have, in part at least, play a role in the fragmentation of the communities. The influence from the West and, sorry to say, also the Near East. The influence of the patriarchates, both East Church and Syriac Orthodox Church, push that they have to fall in line with how they see how Christianity has to work. And as a result, some follow the lead from the Near East, and some are like, yeah, well, we always did it our way, and basically separate and start their own. This is slightly a caricature of the history, but in essence, these are push and pull factors that play a role. Although this presentation was not supposed to be about the pre-19th century community so much, sorry, but okay, having said that.
Anyway, there is an important point. I think it was not just a question of converting the heretics to the Catholic, it was also a question of political power.
Yeah. That goes hand in hand every time.
Is there any other question? If not, let's give a big applause for our speakers. And now our next speaker is Barthoma, who will talk about early results from a survey study on community resilience among Assyrians in Turkey. Thank you, Sir. Thank you. The role is yours.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for the invitation. Pleasure to meet many friends and colleagues and new ones as well. My presentation is slightly different. I will touch upon something contemporary, the present-day Assyrians. This is part of a project we are still conducting among Assyrians in Turkey, Trabzon. It's funded by the Swedish Research Council. It's actually a project about climate mobilities. We wanted to do it among our people in Iraq, but later we decided to just switch the focus to Trabzon because of our strengths are more in Trabzon. In this project, I am together with Ömer Çetres, my colleague at Uppsala University, and Navrez Attu, my colleague and my partner. Yeah. Anyhow, let's get started. This paper is pretty much ready, 80 to 90%. It explores the dynamics of community resilience among the Assyrian minority group in Turkey, a group with a rich cultural heritage and a history of enduring significant social, political, and economic challenges. We have focused on the concept of resilience. Here we define resilience as the ability of individuals and communities to adapt, cope, and thrive in the face of adversities. Resilience is a multifaceted, complex concept that operates at multiple levels, individual, social, institutional, and macro levels. Much of the resilience literature is about studying resilience as a resource of individuals. Here, in this study, we seek to broaden the perspective by examining how resilience is shaped by collective, cultural, and systemic factors within the Assyrian community in Turkey. By doing so, we have an aim to address a critical gap in the resilience literature, which often overlook the unique context of communities. Yeah, these are like, we combine in this study two resilience measurement tools. The first one, which I will present here, is the card known as the resilience instrument developed by Betty Pfefferbaum, and the other one is CD Risk 10, which was developed by Connor and Davidson, which is more about the individual resilience. Let me just very briefly explain what is this CART, the community resilience approach, is about. CART actually, we wanted to have a resilience measurement tool which has a community perspective. We found Betty Pfefferbaum's instrument quite useful because it provides, based on information about a community, help to identify relative community strengths and challenges when facing adversities. This survey instrument also shows how prepared a community is to respond to natural and human-caused crises, as well as the community's capacity to revive in a post-crisis, post-disaster conditions. Very briefly, this instrument is consisted of 21 items, using a Likert scale from 1 to strongly disagree to strongly agree, and measures community resilience across 4 interrelated domains, which I can explain them very briefly here. Just 1 second. The first one is the connection and caring domain. Here, this domain has the, just 1 second, so just my slides here. This domain focuses on social cohesion, belonging, and the importance of social networks within a community, and it explains the strength of relationships within a community, highlighting mainly the importance of trust, empathy, and mutual support. Very practically, strong connections among individuals and organizations within a community contribute to collective action during crisis. This is how it is understood. For example, at neighborhood level with high levels of social cohesion, it's regarded that they are better equipped to respond to crisis. The second domain is defined as resources, which examines the availability and the distribution of tangible and intangible assets within a community, such as financial capital, infrastructure, knowledge, and skills to address community problems. The third one is transformation potential, which refers to the community's capacity for learning, innovation, and adaptation in response to changing conditions. The fourth and the last domain in this typology is, in this instrument, is disaster management, which explains the traditional aspects of disaster management, that is including prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery capabilities of a community in the face of disasters. Yeah. Methodologically, so as we conducted our fieldwork last year in Tur Abdin, this is the survey component of our research. Besides the survey component, we conducted also 35 qualitative interviews using a biographical approach and tried to understand how over generations knowledge about resilience has been transmitted and its connection with the present-day biographical resources of individuals. In these interviews, we haven't finished the analysis yet, but there will be another topic for a different article. These interviews will be used to contextualize this survey results. The interviews are very interesting. I will touch upon them later, but we want to just understand the impact of climate change in Tur Abdin as well, so which is a very last research topic, maybe not at all. Most of the interviews that said the 21 questions in the instrument, we translated them into Surite. We went through a couple of times to make them accessible when we asked the question, understandable for the research participants. We also identified several examples to make them accessible by the participants. So the interviews are conducted like survey interviews, face-to-face interviews in their mother tongue. Only in Istanbul we use Turkish. The survey, yeah, as you see, so we have 153 survey participants in Tur Abdin, which is a very high participant proportional level for a survey study. Knowing the fact that the whole population, only the settled ones are roughly around 2,000. More than 6 to 7% of the population has been covered, not only in Midyat, also but surrounding villages this survey has been conducted. In Istanbul, we conducted the survey not as with a representative sample, but just to have a comparative aspect, to compare the results with the survey results in Tur Abdin. I will skip this one, so just these are like very biographical level, showing the educational level, marital status, ownership of land. There are not many. Yeah, I can just jump into the survey summary. Below here you can see the summary of the mean values for the domains, like connection, caring, resources, transformative potential, and disaster management, broken down by overall sample, gender, location, and age group. Here, a few points to be highlighted, like key insights. The first one, let's start from the connection and the caring domain. We had the highest mean value among our participants, so indicating that the participants generally feel a strong sense of belonging, mutual support, and fairness in the community. Many participants strongly agree or agree with statements about community cohesion and fairness. Regarding the second domain, this domain has a lower mean value, highlighting concerns about the availability of resources, leadership effectiveness, and access to services, which is expected, which was an expected result from the survey, based on our previous knowledge. The second domain also just showed that there are like serious gaps in resource allocation, external collaboration, which could hinder the community's ability to address challenges. The third one, the transformative potential, this follows also a lower, relatively a lower mean value, suggesting the community has a moderate ability to work together, learn from the past, and set future goals. This is more or less also was an expected result, also confirmed by our qualitative interviews. Disaster management has the lowest mean value. This shows that there are like still significant gaps in disaster preparedness, emergency response, or post-disaster support. Many participants disagree or they were uncertain about communities' ability to prevent disaster or provide emergency services. There is also a skepticism about the community's ability to keep people informed during the emergencies. Some other interesting results, maybe I can show the other fancy graphs or diagrams. Here, what you can see, one of the effects was about the age. In our sampling, resilience scores tend to rise with age. Older groups, 50 plus group, report the highest scores in all domains, particularly in connection and caring. Another interesting aspect is gender. Males reported higher scores in all domains. Another important predictor of our survey was location. As you can see here, village, Istanbul and Trabzon, Midyat and the surrounding villages. Village residents have the highest resilience scores. And those in Istanbul consistently report the lowest, especially in disaster management. And there is a heat map. The first column is from the individual resilience research, CD10. But here you will see in which villages, Midyat and Istanbul, where we just conducted the survey. There was one mistake in the software. They couldn't recognize Fenerbahçe as part of Istanbul. Anyway, it doesn't change much the score. Yeah. And we also checked the correlation between the different domains. We computed a correlation matrix for the 4 resilience measure card domains. Correlations range from -1 to +1, where values closer to +1 indicate a strong positive relationship. Values closer to -1 indicate a strong negative relationship. And values near 0 suggest no meaningful relationship. As you can see, the results revealed moderate positive correlations between all resilience domains. The strongest correlation was found between resources and transformative potential. This suggests that communities with better access to resources tend to exhibit stronger transformative potential. Similarly, connection and caring correlated with disaster management. This also indicates that communities with strong social bonds are more prepared to manage crisis effectively. There is also a positive correlation when we looked at the educational level. Positive correlation, the higher educational level, the group has scored better in resilience, especially in resources and disaster management. And these are the gender resilience scores. Women, as I said, reported significantly lower scores in especially transformative potential and disaster management. This suggests, the results suggest that gender perceptions or experiences regarding crisis readiness or resilience is still problematic. This can have different reasons. We just try to have a factor analysis. We look at coping styles. Men tend to adopt more problem-focused coping. This can be one of the reasons. Another reason, one of the main, is the structural barriers in our community. Still, gendered norms and social roles limit women's participation in resource mobilization and decision-making structures in many settings. This also impacts perception and reality of resilience among women. And of course, related to the structural barriers, we have to also underline the structural inequalities, which manifests itself in lower access to education, especially I'm speaking about Trabzon, lower access to employment, and lower access, almost none, leadership opportunities within our community. I see. The gender gap is very clear pattern as manifested in the survey, is also amplified in urban locations. Urban Assyrian women report the lowest resilience, particularly in disaster management. This but it suggests that urban environments present added barriers for women, especially in Turkey, in disaster readiness or resilience, building more resilience. We are not comparing our people's situation in just comparing with our situation in Europe or Western countries, only within Europe. We know from different studies that women, especially in Istanbul, are women. They are like having traditional housewives role. This is also one of the reasons we get lower scores, especially from Istanbul. Just to say a few words about concluding. What did I say? Let me see. I don't see it from here. But the overall mean values reflect a generally positive perception of community resilience among Assyrians. The average resilience score across all is around 3.29 out of 5, indicating moderate to high levels of resilience. As I said during my presentation, the strength of the community lies in strong cohesion, mutual support related to questions, as reflected as we received from lots of information from the villages, and the proactive approach to community improvement and goal setting, especially in the context of Trabzon villages. As for weaknesses, we identified, as said, one of them is the gender gap. The second one is the resource availability, accessibility. There are still problems with accessing resources or building cooperation, alignment with, within the community and also with external actors. This also have an impact for their disaster preparedness. Yeah, these are the points, I think so. Let me see, it's finished. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we place a time for questions. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. I have a kind of comment or a recommendation. I'm very impressed about your project and about the possibility to do it now under these circumstances. And I just want to give a hint that some colleagues and me, we undertook a similar project from 2011 until 2014. So in the context of interdisciplinarity of studies on Syriac people, sometimes we are not that much well connected between disciplines, and it was a study in the context of political sciences. So we also distributed questionnaires with 100 questions, so 18 pages, and became about 180 in Trabzon back, and in Istanbul about 50. So it could be very helpful to have a look. Unfortunately, we couldn't use the huge potential of all, so we had a monograph, the publisher cut a lot of pages from us, and we didn't have the time to use, to analyze and evaluate the all, but you can find the book, published book in 2017, we published it, So I can also, it's also for the rest of the audience who is interested in that topic, I can share the material with you because we don't have the time until now to analyze everything because it was just a side project for us all. But the questions are very similar and interesting, so it would be a pity if all that information would starve again. Okay, thank you very much. Just if you look for the book in the internet, just
what was the name of the book? Sorry.
Religious Minorities in Turkey. Just write monograph, and you will see we have 4 authors at all.
With Fiona, who was you were 4 authors. I didn't get your name. Sorry.
I'm Christoph Wiesel. I'm the number 3 in the line of the 4 authors of the title. So I designed the questionnaires and conducted the field research in Turabin. So
okay, thank you.
Just as a comment.
You can share it then with him.
Yeah, would be great.
Yeah, well, you send it to me and then I'll share it with you. So, other questions? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So I have a question to the 4th point in your scale, disaster management. You try to explain it in one sentence. What do you mean? For me, in such research and interviews, I wonder what do you and what do the people understand under these terms and under these questions? What would fall as only individual difficulties, social challenges, or does go beyond to individual, also to collective? Or in our case, for instance, if you see, we have got disaster actually with all culture, heritage, protection and all this stuff. Where would you describe it from your point of view?
Yeah, we try to because these are like abstract constructions. When you ask, it's not easy to grasp them, especially community, and there are no direct translations in Suvrite. Yeah, we try to unpack it like knowledge about disaster. So what to do? You know what when you face with a crisis. Imagine somebody just attacked your village. What are you going to do? Are you prepared? Are you organized? You know. Or, for example, fires, you know. A couple of years ago, they organized themselves together with our diaspora groups. They bought fire extinguishers. They don't wait only the state to take measures for disaster, especially, I mean, the natural disaster issues, you know. Preparedness within the community. You know what to do. You know how to organize yourself. You have the knowledge. So that is very briefly.
Yeah, but, may I? You say for any protection in disaster situation need proper preparation.
Yeah.
And this way of preparation for everything that what is common, like being in the village or being in the city or being just in case like our libraries. What is the protection of our library in Mar Gabriel or the Zahfar and Mar Arbeit if any disaster comes there? Being even natural disaster like burn, fire, etc. Is there any if one feels secure, one should have, okay, we are prepared. You prepare in certain circumstances, the people are ready, the structure is ready, they are trained, and they deal with it.
Unfortunately, my answer will be negative. And the third domain actually confirms this. Learning structures are limited. You don't learn from your own mistakes, you know. We talk about the problems. That's how you build resilience, how you prepare yourself for a disaster, you know. Man-made, natural-made, that's not important. Learning from the past, learning from the mistakes. There is a broken link, you know. That also confirms appeared in our results, especially in the third domain, which I just briefly touched upon. Also, especially in individual resilience, this is one of the weakest, because we name it as like a transformative potential. You don't turn a crisis to an opportunity or transformation process. That's the very idea of this, the third domain and the connection of the third domain with the fourth one.
Yeah, thank you for this very valuable research on contemporary Assyrian collective resilience. As far as I know, or maybe you could highlight because I haven't understood it properly, As far as I know, resilience, a psychological term, develops from PTSD, or it's not mostly from post-traumatic experiences, but stem from a traumatic experience itself, and is individually based in our psyche, and therefore we saw in your survey a kind of urban and peripheric differentiation, but they were still based on the individuals themselves and how they deal in certain approaches, or more on the setting of their surroundings, maybe the city or the village. Mm-hmm. So in the approach you have been conducting, is there any basis of a collective mechanism which builds up itself on the resilience? So are the people themselves aware, or are there any mechanisms to foster resilience and being aware of the traumatic, like the...
Yeah, I can just start from the last one. Actually, this resilience card, resilience instrument developed for Red Cross, their interventions, humanitarian interventions in Africa. It has to be adopted in a way to our case. So we have done the same one, the same type of research in Brasilia among favelas and also indigenous populations, and also in South Africa among a minority group from Uganda coming and working in the mine industry. It is not the most ideal one, but you need to adopt and develop. What I wanted to underline, mention was, when we translated the questions into Surite, we adopted this questionnaire in a way, That is the way it should be. This is like an instrument, it's limited, but as I said, we gathered more information through our qualitative interviews. This was the last one, the second and the third one. Yeah, individual resilience scores are quite lower than the community resilience score. This can be related to different aspects, because when we ask people to comment about their perceptions about community, do you think your community is strong? It is slightly different than asking the same person, do you feel like you are strong, When you talk in third personal pronouns, so that you can express your opinion differently than talking about yourself. So, especially as I said, among women, we get very lower scores, so in Trabzon and even lower in Istanbul.
Thank you. You just referred to doing similar studies in other communities, because that would be interesting to me. Control group or whatever. How does these figures relate to other communities, whether it's the dominant group in the same society or to other minorities in other situations? That would be also helpful to understand the figures that you give as within just the group itself. How do they relate to other?
I get your point that the initial idea was to have a comparative research, but running an international project, so they just delivered, they just finished like a few weeks ago their survey conference, whereas we finished like 10 months ago. So we have to analyze, again, the survey, to comparatively analyze the results from Brazil with, let's say, with the Assyrian case in Trabzon plus Istanbul.
Todi Manfona for a very interesting and fascinating lecture. As I said earlier in another lecture, I love graphs. I'm a very visual person, so a lot of things stuck in my mind. My question is, look, and I don't want to sound sexist, so I just want to qualify my question right now. In Iraq, the general perception, and I've been living in Iraq for the last 2 years, the general perception is among our community, Assyrians, Chaldeans, Syriacs, whatever you want to call us, is that it's the women in our community that are less umthanoye and that are more prone to making their husbands leave the homeland. Is this because of things like these lower scores that we're seeing in their self-perception of their community's resilience or disaster response, etc.?
Yeah, very good question. Actually, I can share a few anecdotes from our ethnographic fieldwork in Trabzon. We also observed women. It was just when we tried to, for example, interview even muhtars, you know, in the villages, their wives usually coming and, like in a couple of examples, they were trying to just don't talk too much. You know, they still have the fear. They were at the same time serving us something, but at the same time they wanted to intervene. So a few women respondents I wanted to interview, especially Saidna in your village, they were extremely scared, so they mixed me up with Suroyo TV, Suroyo Sad. I said, no, they didn't even give me an interview, Saidna. That's a complaint from my side.
You know, indeed, what surprised me in your, study, it was the marital status. There were 99 single and 101 married and 21 others. This is in an Assyrian community. This is probably now a new topic that we are dealing with. But in relation also to what Dr. Adira has underlined, I think it's more than an issue of not being concerned about their national pride, but it's more than a psychological, maternal issue that their kids, it's a question of protection that the female probably emphasize the fact, to leave the homeland. Are there any questions? I'm thankful to you for the excellent presentation. And now we are going to our last speaker, Dr. Zeitoune Abboud, who will give his speech on the role of non-fire in documenting the Seyfo period. The role is yours. Abboud.
Shlomo Brechtahro, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. Originally, I prepared 60 slides for you, but I have mercy with you. So at the end, there are 30 slides. You can count the time, no problem. So I'm talking about Naum Faik because I can say I worked extensively with his writings, published some books about him in Arabic, in German, in English, and we transcribed his magazine Kawkab Madnho and soon also Beth Nahrin. And for you, as we don't know, Naum Faik Palach is originally from Omid, Diyarbakir, and is counted as the founder of our modern Assyrian national movement. And beside that, he is the founder of a society, Intibah Society, Irutho, which had 14 sections in Beth Nahrin or Upper Mesopotamia, before the genocide, before 1915. So the task was for today is to dig deeper in the question, what did Naum Faik documented about the Seyfo period? I receive these questions in my lectures in our community very often, that they say Naum Faik didn't wrote anything about Seyfo. Well, the problem with Naum Faik and his compatriots, or the documentation of that time, these documents were lost. I can say we found them around the year 2008, 2010, with the establishment of a short-living institution named MARA, Modern Assyrian Research Archive. This institution searched for old materials, for libraries, for private libraries also, and make them digitally available. So starting from 2010, I would say,
these magazines are available for us. And for us, the first reproduction or first book was my book in Arabic, with all Arabic or originally written in Gershuni Arabic of Naum Fayr in 2020. So before that, I can say we rarely had anything originally from Naum Fayr. So, and back to Naum Fayr, he was a journalist, also known as a journalist. He was publisher of 3 magazines. First of all, Kawkab Madnho in Diyarbakir before the genocide. Then the long-lived magazine Beth Nahrin from 1960 till 1930, with interruption of 1 year, where he was also the chief editor of Huyodo. So, talking about Beth Nahrin, because this is the main, I will talk also about Huyodo, but Beth Nahrin is the main magazine, and here you can see how many issues were produced and in which languages. All of them were produced in Gershuni, Syriac letters with Turkish, with Arabic, and of course Syriac too. We have in total, or we look in total for 186 issues. We have around, I would say, around 170, a little bit less, 170 are available. So we still miss around 20 issues are still missing. Huyodo was the first step to unite the Assyrian powers, I would say, in the United States, to have a modern magazine in typing letters. From this magazine, we still miss 1 issue. We have 39 issues. So, coming back to Naum Fayr and documenting Seyfo. What I can say, there is a lot of documentation in the writings of Naum Fayr about Seyfo. This is only a short list what we can find. I will display some of them more in detail. But you can see that he for sure wrote about Seyfo, about different, also after Seyfo, what happened. So, but in general, we see the situation in Beth Nahrin that news came very late to the US. Here you have one of these articles where they say that 1 year or 1 year and 3 months the letters take till they received in the US. So that's why the first information about Seyfo we will see in 1960, at the end of 1916. Here again, they asked to provide, or they request their readers to provide them with relevant details. So they were seeking for information. They received information from Armenian newspapers, from Arabic newspapers, and also from American newspapers. But at the end, they wanted, of course, from our core group information. So the first longer information or article was written by Sanharib Bali. Sanharib Bali was a compatriot of Naum Fayr. He produced also his own magazine named Sautat Othuroy till 1950. He wrote here about Adaysher, the murder of Adaysher, the bishop of Sard. Here we have also a poem about him. We reproduced this article in English and in German. So you can see here it's April 1960, the first article we met dealing with Seyfo. Then we meet in Arabic, a very emotional article by Naum Fayr. He describes Eastern celebration in Mesopotamia, and here you can read it. I don't have to read it, but you can see here how the sorrows are, how he described the calamities of our people there, how they used to celebrate Easter, and how it's now during Seyfo. Then here they received information about the massacres in Beth Nahrin, especially here in
Midyat, Jizre, Nusaybin. And there are also names here, Gabro Hado, Ablahad Effendi. And here also, Naum Faiq states clear that the oppressive policies of the Unionists, Ittihad Jidlar, are responsible for that. Then also in Syriac, an article about the war, Qrobo Tsuryoye Am Sharbotho Tqordoye, the ongoing fight. This is more about the Eastern Syriacs, or as you said, Nestorians here, or Assyrians. He get this information from his sister journals, Assyrian Courier from Jewel Warda and Mshahdana Turaya of Paul Mia. So this, you can see here a lot of headlines of that time dealing with the situation in Hakkari and the Iranian side. The articles are of course longer, but I took only the headlines to show you what is documented. And of course, before coming to assassination, there are also printings of letters from, for example, Mar Benjamin Shamoun, before he was assassinated. Here he wrote a letter, I think first of all to Jewel Warda and Paulus Nvia, and it was reproduced here in Bet Nahrin also. Then we have now December 1960, so 1.5 years, you can say, after beginning of Seyfo. We have here the information about Galle Hermes from Midyat, his murder. It's a longer article, as you see, with a picture. We have rarely pictures in Bet Nahrin, but here you can see Galle Hermes received the picture, and you will see later some other pictures. Then we have now January 1917, the information that Professor Ashur Yusuf from Kharput was murdered. Also here his picture and a longer article about his life and efforts. Then a further article, how the deportation or the Seyfo was happened in Midyat. This one is in Arabic. There they are talking about Shamoun Hanne Haido and his brother Malke. They are very known from Sare or from Iwardo, as you like, or Psorino. There it's documented that they fought against the troops who were are in front of the villages. Then we mentioned, Jan van Ginkel mentioned Metropolitan Abdul Nur. He was at the beginning bishop of Kharput, later became bishop of Syria. He was in Homs and then came back as bishop of Diyarbakir. Here we have a report that it's about Gargar and Shiro, that they were emptied from the Christian population and that the bishop came too late and they stated that no more Christians left there. Then we have a longer article about the mobilization in Diyarbakir, or the victims of Diyarbakir. First of all in Bet Nahrin, but a longer eyewitness report in Huyodo. There we see a longer list. This is still Bet Nahrin. A longer list of names. I highlighted some of them. This one is the first one. Is Yaqub Darakchi. I will talk about him later. Then here you see Bashar Helmi Buruji. I will also talk about him. And this woman, I think it's a woman, Mervan Jadir, daughter of Quryaqos Khadr Shah. Quryaqos Khadr Shah was the father-in-law of Naum Faiq. So this was sister-in-law of Naum Faiq, which was murdered in Mardin. And he listed, as you can see here, 47 names which were killed from Diyarbakir. Yaqub Darakchi, I talked about him. He was a teacher there in Omid in Diyarbakir. And as you can see, he received also a picture in Beth Nahrin. Ilyas Fahmi, this article came in 1924, some years later, but this guy was a successor of Naum Faiq as teacher in Diyarbakir, and he was killed. He was taken to the military service, but he was killed during that time. He was very young, I think 26 years. Okay. Malfono Bashar Halmi Buruji, I talked about him. He was also took to military work or service or construction work, killed there. He was a compatriot of Naum Faiq as a journalist. He was chief editor of Shifuro. Then we have an extended list in Beth Nahrin. This list was presented in the Peace Conference of Paris. This list was compiled by Patriarch Elias Shakir. Of course, it lists only the victims of his church, around 100,000 or 90,000 people. Then we have, of course, the murder of Mar Shamoun is documented there. One last thing, I have 3 slides left. Naum Faiq is known for his poems, for his poetry. And as you know, in poems you try to compress your feelings in very little sentence to be powerful. And this you can see, this is one of them. If you write here, helpless Beth Nahrin is devastated, crushed underfoot today. The people of Diyarbakir and Baghdad are all grieving now. Nusaybin, Jizre, Midyat, as well as Mosul and Mardin, Kharput and Orfa, all lie in ruins, as does Mia Farqin, today Silvan. This is one of them. The other poem is, you can see here, it's from 1920. The years of cruel and dreadful war have inflicted incurable wounds and irreparable breaches in the heart of our nation. There are no more people, no more life. Everything is lost to nothingness. Not a single person remains in the villages. The dry bones of hundreds of thousands of Assyrian victims buried in the vast deserts of Iraq bear witness. One longer poem in 1921. There is always discord between our leaders and the nation. It's of course a little bit, he is very critical in his articles. They sing conflicting notes devoid of harmony. All hell broke loose in the Assyrian realm. My sighs and yearning mourn the red blood that has been shed. The bloodthirsty Turk destroyed my hope without remorse. My curses are upon the cursed lineage of Turan. Mesopotamia choked in blood, groaned. There, chastity, dignity, property, and lives were made cheap. This in short, the poems, and as I said, after the genocide, there are a lot of reports. Some of them are republished in modern languages also. We have a lot of information about the Paris Peace Conference, the situation of Tur Abdin in the 1920s, Taqibat Hajo, there's a longer article for that. The deportation from Ofa is a longer article. And in conclusion, I can say Naum Faiq offers a wide field of research for us today. We have to dig deeper. What I could collect so far were around 100 pages, only from raw material I could select. Of course, in general, every article or almost all articles of Naum Faiq, if you read them, you feel the sorrow of oppression of Seyfo in them. There are this feeling. Of course,
he gives also hope in the meantime to awake, Ithair, Bar, Thur, and so on, these poems. And at the end, it's an open field. As I said, the material is not completely available because the organization Mara is closed due to financial problems. So it's stored, the material is stored in a Google Drive, where only some people have access to that. But however, thanks to Thomas Beth Abdallah, who is responsible for that still, at least we have the scans in digital form. So what we could now do, as I mentioned before, we have so far 4 books. There are more books, of course, it's not all. This is with original articles of Naum Faiq. As I said, I published the Arabic one in 22, then 2021 in Syriac, Thomas Beth Abdallah, and then English and German. And we have the complete transcription of Kawkab Madenho, was also published. And soon I will publish 2 volumes of Beth Nahrin in Arabic, will be also available, so that scholars can directly see what was written there. So, all right, thank you.
Now we are really on time. We have 10 minutes. Please. Questions, comments.
If you want, I have my 30.
No, thank you. Later. So that's. But we will enjoy them once you publish the whole book. So I'm sure that we will learn a lot of things.
Thank you.
From the content. So please, who is willing to ask to intervene? As you know, it's please.
Thank you very much, Abboud. I am somehow accompanying your work, and I'm happy about your publications. Do we have anything before? So we have now the information part, the information about Seyfo time. But what do we have about, especially from the areas where he was active as a teacher in Razan and the region of Redwan and Bcheiria and so on, even Bitlis? Do we have anything from this material?
Do you mean directly of Naum Faiq, of his biography?
From his.
Well, he had an extensive article in Intibah magazine. There was also a magazine named Intibah as a Society, which was published in the US by Jabbour Boyaji from 1909 till 1915. There's a longer article where Naum Faiq, by his own, write the reasons why he escaped the homeland. But about his teaching career, we know only the places where he was, but he more deeper not. We have, of course, an article which I have in original in my possession by his handwriting, where he started a longer article about the massacre of 1895 from Diyarbakir, but he didn't continue that. It was 1.5 page in Gershuni, I think Arabic, not sure about that. But we have information from Intibah magazine, because it started from 1909 till 1915. There are a lot of information which we have to dig deeper. Because it's in Gershuni Osmanli, we have to need a bridge to the modern Turkish and then to the other languages. I can't Osmanli and I can't Turkish, but I am very happy to have a network. I have to mention their names. Aydin Aslan Benakshi, Jan Betsawoy, Yosef Bahdi, and we're getting bigger and bigger, this circle who managed to transcribe this value we have in our hands now.
Yes, especially because we like a kind of organized workshop on such topics, because we feel proud of what our forebears were when the whole golden period from the 3rd until to the 14th century, and then there's a big gap. And now we discover that the gap is not such big as we mean. We don't know our own heritage, and thanks to this group.
Thank you.
We have to support. We have
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. What I didn't mention is we not only published these 4 books, we have around maybe 15 or 20 books from our group already published from this material. So I focused only on Nahum Fire and Seyfo for this session. We have published more books than these 4.
As you can see, working in a collective way, Syriac makes us much more productive. So let's learn to work. Really, this is probably the first step, and I'm thankful to you to mention it. If there any other question, yeah, please.
Thank you so much, and I will have to write many chapters new of my book. Because all I knew of Nahum Veit was that he was a strong person who always reminded his people, be strong and wake up. That's the concept of Itiba. And now first I was very moved to see his tragic lyrics. Yes, I hadn't known anything of it. But my question is different. You were talking about where he got the information about the situation of the Mar Shimon. He published even a call for sponsoring the war in the Urmia region. And I thought maybe this is the first time that people from the Diyarbakir region are that much aware of the situation further east. And you were saying where he got his information from, like a letter from the Mar Shimon when he published a letter from him. How did he get these letters? Can you document this, or is it this just...
No, it's documented because he writes from where he received that. The Patriarch had a representative there. His name is Paul Shamoun, who lived in New York and became also a co-auditor of Huyodo later. So there was a strong connection between Eastern and Western Assyrians. So this is the connection which were there. And they had also a church ceremony after his death, of the assassination, together in Yonkers. There's a longer report about this ceremony also, where Nahum Fayek and other from the Diyarbakir community also attended this mass. Yeah.
And I would just, in relation to your observation, Mar Shimon is not calling to the war, he is calling to the defense. Because it was the unique way to defend his own people. So it's not a call for the war, but for the defense. And everybody is legitimized to somehow call for the defense. So let's be there.
Did I say war? Did I say war? Then I apologize.
You said war, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Just support, financial support.
Oh no.
Yes, that's.
This is why I was telling
So
you.
this is one of my slides which I left, as you mentioned, Mar Binyamin. This poem was written by Nahum Fayek and translated, I think, by my friend Niklas in my book. So this is one of his poems in remembrance of Mar Shimon. Okay.
Good. Who else was? Yeah, please. And we are almost at the last question.
Okay.
No, Ninip Lamansu translated it.
Ninip. Sorry, Ninip Chipona.
Well, Nicholas and Ninip are
both my brothers.
Thank you, this is great work. Now, the information you gave us today seems to me, I mean, they are all what he wrote already also published in the journals at that time. He published quite a lot, over 100 and so on. How much is still material there that's private material, like private letters of him, or any correspondence with on family members or other scholars that it wasn't published? Of course, he published a lot of information that he received and made them known in the journals, but how much is there still sort of spread, and can you give us a little bit idea about
Well,
that?
I received what I see, the box with original material of Nahum Fayed while I was in the US. From his private possession, also from him directly, you can say. So I scanned all of them. Important documents I translated and published in my books. I have, maybe Professor Szabo is interested, a lot of handwriting scripts with a kind of dictionary. I don't know, it's Arabic, Syriac, I'm not sure what is it. I can...
Arabic dialects.
No, that's not the Omid dialect. It's something else which is not published yet. So, and I don't know what to do with that. So I'm open to say that, yes. So that's all. By the way, I use also for Sanharib, for Farid Nizha, also for Nahum Fayed, I try to come in contact with his family. So unfortunately, they are always all Americanized, so they are Americans. They don't know nothing about their grandfather.
This is the disaster that we should avoid that it becomes bigger. So let's focus on this last period, which is essential for us also from different point of views. I thank you very much for your patience. Now we have finished. Thank you.
Just to make an announcement. You're starting at 9, not 9:30.